Hello and welcome to Ashock the Fourth Wall! I had been hoping, as an extra treat this year, to include another review this month, a non-Ring manga, but related, Ju-On Video Side. Ju-On is probably better known to American audiences as The Grudge, another J-horror series about a ghost similar to the one in The Ring, but with its own mythology and series and interesting twists and turns. Thing is, there are only so many official Ring manga, and we're definitely doing the remaining 3 next year to close this out. But Linkara, what about Irma? What about I Married the Ring Girl? You did hear me when I said official, right? As in licensed? I generally try to avoid that stuff unless someone pays me to cover it. But speaking of official material, let's talk about the next volume. Volume 4 is another adaptation of one of the Ring novels. There have been 6 books, and we're covering the adaptation of the 4th one. But it's not a sequel, at least not in full. This one, titled Birthday, is an anthology of 3 short stories. A sidequel, a prequel, and then a sequel to Loop, the 3rd novel, and a follow-up on more of the virtual reality thing I mentioned last time. But I guess the creators of the manga realized, wait a second, no one's adapted the 3rd book in any other mediums, so adapting a follow-up to that would be kind of silly. Let's just do even more prequel. And I find this hilarious because after Volume 4, they released Volume 0, which is an adaptation of the film Ringu Zero Birthday, which is itself an adaptation of the novel's prequel short story into film length. So just like with Rasen vs. Ringu 2, we've basically got 2 branching paths, but it's prequels this time instead of sequels. This franchise is confusing. I had originally planned to talk about some more Chinese bootleg Ring movies that were supplied to me by the ever-wonderful Ed Glazer of Neon Harbor, even wrote up some brief thoughts, but no. Truth be told, they aren't Ring movies. And they're also not very good either, so it's kind of pointless. Say what you will about the Bunshin Saba vs. Sadako trilogy, but at least those felt like Ring movies. Not just some random ghost that looks like Sadako, or completely unrelated ghost who happens to also be named Sadako. While also clips from the Ring play on a haunted projector. Weird. Point is, let's dig into The Ring, Volume 4, Birthday, and talk about some more official Ring stuff.
Welcome to Ashock the Fourth Wall, where dead comics rise. Linkara's gonna bring you all a Halloween surprise. Monsters from scary stories and adjacent categories. If you step into his laboratory, you won't believe your eyes. Linkara is a man punch, or is he something else? Linkara, for the last few days, he hasn't been himself. Linkara, brains, gore, skeletons and guts. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
The cover is of a naked Sadako of indeterminate age. No naughty bits are shown, but I'm censoring it anyway just to be on the safe side. Really screams, this is connected to The Ring. Let's take a look at the back cover's description. The Ring saga continues! Almost everyone knows about the frightening film adaptations of Koji Suzuki's fantastic Japanese horror novels. In fact, the American adaptation of The Ring 2 is currently shooting in Oregon, unfortunately. Also, no, The Ring 2 is not an adaptation of either Ringu 2 or Spiral. The best you get for adaptation is that it involves Sadako wanting to be reborn, which isn't really the plot of Ringu 2. But consequently, isn't it weird that the worst official Ring stories all involve Sadako wanting to be reborn? Anyway, more of whatever this is. Now you can find out what the story is really about. It's about 2 prequels completely unconnected to the American films and the expansion of a plot point from a movie that was completely abandoned by the franchise going forward. Birthday is a collection of 3 short stories providing detailed background stories. Nice redundancy there. The stories are providing stories about the evil Sadako and what makes her otherworldly scheme work so well. Yes, after I join an acting troupe, I'll get murdered by a guy because of really gross reasons, and then have him throw me down a well, and my psychic powers will imprint a bunch of vague images on a videotape more to do with my mom than me, and said tape will murder people in 7 days, unless they make a copy of the tape, or write down a detailed description of the tape, or I infect ovulating women so I can give clone birth to myself.
Truly, you have a dizzying intellect.
We begin our first story, The Casket Floating in the Sky, with a title page featuring Mai Takano naked and being groped by the Venom symbiote, I guess. Why is this book so goddamn horny? Like before, no nipples or anything, censoring it just to be on the safe side. We truly open with more naked Mai! It fell down and entered my body. Meimu, just go and find a hentai doujinshi or something already! You're in Japan! I know you have those, for crying out loud! And yes, Meimu, the artist from The Ring Volume 2, returns for this book, their art of Mai resembling how she looked there too. Mai is being informed that Ryuji's research paper, whatever it was, will get finished. However, as she's walking home, she feels like someone's watching her. Might as well just get this out of the way. This is the sidequel portion. This is showing what was going on with Mai during the events of Rasen up until Sadako was reborn through her. Mai returns home to her apartment and, after downing some water and I don't know, headache pills? Whatever. Point is, she spots the ring tape sitting on her table and remembers when Asakawa spoke to her. You sure Ryuji Takayama didn't leave you a message? Like in a code that he swallowed or something? He tells her that watching the tape might have caused his death, but she points out he died of a heart attack. How could a videotape kill someone like the professor? I mean, one of his students maybe, but professors are immune to videotape murder. Mai meets with one of Ryuji's colleagues, and dear God, this establishing shot! What is with their body proportions here? Apparently it wasn't Sadako who was the problem, it was Slender Man the whole time! The guy says that Ryuji's research paper on philosophy is missing the last few pages for its conclusion, and they need them to complete the series. He asks her to find those pages. And if you can't find them, can you fill in the gap where the logic takes a huge leap? Somehow he went from talking about the categorical imperative to saying that gophers were a superior form of life, and we really need the steps in between here. Mai points out that she could never do such a thing. And yeah, she means from a moral perspective, but honestly, it's just a bad idea to have someone else take over your philosophy papers since, you know, it's usually being built around the understanding of the person who's writing it. Trying to inject Mai's own beliefs, understandings, and biases into it will kind of taint whatever point he may have been trying to make. Professor Takayama's last research paper must not die, and printing it with a disclaimer about how it was unfinished is just impossible. No work has ever been published incomplete and posthumously. Inside the apartment, which is in the process of being packed up and the furniture covered with sheets, Mai uncovers the TV and VCR. Remembering Asakawa's words, she ejects the ring tape from it, and then puts it back in, I guess? Weird. In any case, she watches it. Since this is based off of the novel, the ring tape is a bit different, including the imagery of dice being rolled. Not enough people talk about Sadako's gambling problem. Actually, the dice were a part of Shizuko's psychic demonstration in the novel's version. No Sada on the eye either, it's just the character on a black screen. And a bunch of screaming faces yelling, fraud, liar, etc., again relating to the psychic demonstration and all. You know, come to think of it, considering the movie's version of events, doesn't it seem kind of weird that Sadako spent 30 years in that well, and her final psychic moments during that time were, man, those people were real dicks to my mom. Weirdly, we get the shot from inside the well in this, but not of the guy standing over it, just a pebble dropping from up top. Everyone who watches this will, in a week at the exact same time, be dead. If you don't want to die, do what I tell you now. You must write down a detailed report of all the events that transpired involving a reporter investigating this tape. Also, the 4 teens who see this before that guy even gets involved, you are screwed. Afterwards, Mai starts getting the feeling that someone or something is watching her, which I guess is represented by these 2 dots floating in the air. She was unable to find the missing pages, and they just elect to print the philosophy paper while removing part of it. And then this remark. What's happening to my body? Oh, don't worry, Mai. Those changes are natural for a girl your age who's been cursed by an evil videotape. Or maybe she means she's getting really lanky and with a tiny head like we see in this side shot. What is Meimu's issues with drawing people from a distance in this book? Mai has a dream where she's floating in the water of the well and looking into the night sky. 2 moons? It's the scene from the video. Of course. Sadako was an alien from another planet this whole time. Of course, it all fits. And then I guess Sadako rises up next to her and she has a big grin plastered on her face. You know, I once died in this place. It's good that I can laugh about it now. Mai suddenly wakes up, but now she's standing on the edge of a roof and clinging onto a fence so she doesn't suddenly fall forwards. Naturally, she has no memory of how she got up here. Oh geez, my alcohol blackouts are getting worse. As she walks down the streets, she suddenly sees a large black box floating above her. Oh great, as if Mai doesn't have enough problems already, the monolith aliens want to make her into a star baby! She describes it as a casket in the sky, but honest to God, it looks like a regular cardboard box with the way the lid is on. You know, like some sort of long box of the damned or something. But that'd be ridiculous. Is it because I saw that video? Ah yes, let's put that down under the list of side effects for the ring curse. Photographs of you get muddy, horses/deer go nuts around you, sometimes seeing a ghost girl in reflections, and hallucinations of caskets floating above you. Just like a recorded tape can get recorded over, just like a computer program can be rewritten, my genes are being erased and other genes are replacing them. I already went into how stupid that was last time, but like, how does Mai know that's what's happening to her? In Rasen, we knew that because 2 doctors were studying the effects of the ring virus. How does Mai know she's being replaced genetically? Like before, the censorship here is more about covering my own ass than there being actual nudity. Mai is basically a Barbie doll in this shot. Also, I think it's less Sadako that's the issue and more the Scarlet Witch based on all these blocks. It's me, but not me anymore. I'm becoming someone else. Hopefully I become someone with nipples. She realizes this is happening to her instead of just a heart attack because she was ovulating on the day she died, as described in Rasen. It is someone who died in that well? What is it gonna do when it returns to this world? Watch a lot of movies and go on a book tour, apparently. Almost sounds wholesome when I describe it like that. As I began losing consciousness, I looked up at the sky. There I saw a floating casket prepared for me. Then it turned out to just be a weird design for Amazon delivery drones. When the time comes, everyone will see the casket. And then they'll file a formal complaint because the casket they got is for someone 2 feet shorter than them. And so the story ends with her saying if she ever opens her eyes again, she would not be herself. And yeah, the visual of the casket floating there is nice, but also this is just kind of weird and pointless. This doesn't actually give us any more insight into Mai, her emotions, the details we already knew about her. All it does, frankly, is remind me how stupid Rasen is. Points for the cool imagery, the casket floating is ominous and weird, the building blocks thing, Sadako's creepy smile in the well, the 2 dots as eyes. But that's all I can really give it. This was just nothing.
We hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater.
Maybe things will fare better in our second story, Lemonheart. And get a load of the visual here for the title page. A woman kind of emerging from a melting lemon that's also a heart. I am neither a cardiologist nor a pomologist, but I feel like if a lemon or a heart is melting, then it's not in good shape. And we continue the surreal art on the first page, where a woman's chest seems to be pulled open to reveal the Lemonheart. Oh good, we finally have that long-awaited Ring and Hellraiser crossover. Please don't forget me. Lady, if you walk down the street with a bunch of hooks pulling your chest open like that, I guarantee you I won't forget it. If you love me, please preserve me in your memory. Until the day I return from the dead. After I'm back from the dead, though, feel free to just delete all that. We're starting fresh. We truly open on a man on a park bench clutching his chest. I guess it's stopped now. That lemon that replaced my heart lasted longer than I thought it would. The 42-year-old man walks into a building, noting that there's a pain in his chest that's been bothering him lately. He mentions Sadako's name, and then we see an empty theater, a woman without a face appearing on the stage, a guy working some sound controls, faceless people in the crowd, and then the audio going, ga ha 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 ha, za, 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 za. Sadako's career with a Lady Gaga cover band didn't go very well. It was apparently a nightmare by this guy, Toyama. He's having an affair with this woman, And this detail is not actually important. I'd say maybe it's a character thing, like he's trying to rekindle his lost love from youth given what happens later in the story, but that feels like a stretch since we don't spend a lot of time with him in this time period. Most of the story is a flashback to 24 years ago when he was a sound technician for the Hisho theater group. He hasn't had that nightmare since that time, when he was in love with a new actress in the group, Sadako Yamamura. As a reminder for those only familiar with the American films, unlike Samara, Sadako wasn't a child when she was murdered. She was an adult, and before the events that led to her death, she was an actress in this theater group. Which does suddenly make me think her using videotape as the medium of her curse is just revenge against people who would tape her performances to sell bootleg copies. Toyama thinks that the nightmare has returned because of what happened a month ago. You'll recall that in Rasen, Mitsuo met up with a reporter colleague of Asakawa, Yoshino, who gave him the Ring report. And it seems that Toyama is contacted by the guy as well, wanting to know about Sadako as part of his investigation. He couldn't really tell him much at the time, Toyama wanting to know where Sadako had been in the intermediate time as well. After Asakawa's death, the two meet up again. Yoshino tells Toyama about Mai's death in the ventilation shaft and her mysteriously giving birth beforehand. So the two deaths are unrelated? Yeah, and about Sadako Yamamura. I just suddenly felt like mentioning someone who was mysteriously murdered recently. Probably not important at all. When Yoshino is a bit evasive over why he wants to know about Sadako, Toyama demands to know the details. Yoshino explains about Asakawa investigating her as well, but there are only a few members of the theater group still alive at this point, and Toyama is one of them. 24 years ago, you and Sadako had a special relationship. It's not that special. I just helped her set up her YouTube channel. She wouldn't listen when I said it should be an ASMR channel. He shows Toyama a script from her last performance before she disappeared. Girl in Black. The prequel to The Woman in Black. We flash back to 24 years ago as we see Toyama working on organizing the sound effects of the performance. Music 1, theme song. I'm thinking The Perfect Strangers theme song. Music 5, Church Bell from Afar. And you thought I was kidding about the Hellraiser crossover. The young Sadako meets with Toyama, explaining that she's scared. He thinks it's because it's her debut as an actress, but she explains that it's actually something on the tape. Do you hear a strange woman's voice? Huh? Sorry. My mom insisted I record her drunkenly singing karaoke last night. Just ignore it. She explains it's something another crew member, Okubo, told her about. He's not sure what she's referring to, but in turn, she says there's something else, that there's a small altar in the back of the stage. She finds it quickly and opens it up, but instead of it being the standard one found in a theater, it's one in the sound technician booth. The strange altar has something equally strange inside of it. A dried up piece of an umbilical cord. Oh good, we found where Frank Sunderland in Silent Hill 4 used to work. I don't think we ever get an explanation for just what the hell this is or why it's here. Just as Okubo described. He says that he recognizes what that woman's voice in the tape sounds like. It's like how a woman moans when she delivers. She must have delivered a baby. Moaning, screaming in pain, basically the same thing, right? Also, ew, Sadako, don't touch that! That umbilical cord is testimony of someone being born into the world. Yes. A testimony.
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
When Toyama asks Okubo about it, he says he didn't know anything about the altar, and the sound thing wasn't meant to be anything weird. I just wanted to help Sada relax. I thought a horror story or two might help her a bit. Ah yes, there's nothing more calming or relaxing than a horror story! Later, we learn that the play usually has a professional dancer take part in the play, but she often missed rehearsals, so Sadako stood in for her. Another talent of Sadako is that we never see her exercise. Her dance moves! Toyama tells Sadako that she's a good dancer, despite her own belief she isn't, but she feels better after his reassurances. Toyama helped her with her acting, and she often attracted the attention of other people, leading to jealousy from the other actresses in the group. Later, the two admitted that they had fallen in love with one another. However, Toyama later saw Sadako with the play's director, Shigemori, and heard her admit love for him, too. Toyama is worried that he was just being used by her. I noticed that her attitude towards society was that of defiance. It had a quality of ill will. It was as if she wanted to be an actress so that she could take revenge on the world. Of course! disbelieving reporters drove her mother to suicide so she'd take revenge on them by becoming an actress. What a brilliant plan!
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
After he fumbles a bit during a rehearsal, distracted by his thoughts on Sadako, Toyama exposits that there was a tape that had been made that Okuba had recorded that made fun of Shigemori. Naturally, they didn't want the tape just lying around in case he heard it, so Toyama set to work recording over it with the microphone turned off. While that goes, Sadako enters and he asks her about what happened with Shigemori. She does not answer, just kind of teases him about being jealous. The conversation shifts to the cassette tapes that Toyama uses in his audio work. This takes place in 1966, so home video cassette wasn't really a thing yet, but Sadako predicts the rise of the technology someday for home video recording. It could be something that'll happen after I'm dead. What are you saying? You're still very young. Don't worry. Someday we'll all have home video technology. Me personally, I think the most popular will be capacitance electronic discs, or CED for short. Sadako says she wants to be young forever. Toyama offers this counter. People don't live forever, but by having children, their genes can continue to exist. Well, yeah, but your genes don't really think or feel for themselves, so it's not really living on so much as some protein strings that are similar to your own get to go on without you. Unless this is Marvel, in which case we should feel bad for the poor molecules when they die. Sadako, however, points out that if you can't have children, you can't pass on your genes. Toyama, those who are born from people aren't necessarily people themselves. Sometimes they're dung beetles. Also, I'm hoping that's her seeing herself as separate from humanity because of her psychic powers and not the intersex thing, because if this says that intersex people aren't human, go straight to hell, manga. Toyama says he has no idea what the hell she's talking about, but just says that he loves her. Sadako responds that if he loves her, engrave her on his memory, admitting her own love for him. In the interview, Toyama explains that she refused to get physically intimate with him beyond kissing, which is kind of hilarious to me because according to what I've read, in the novel they did have sex after that, and it got recorded by the audio equipment. This was also the last time he saw her. Yoshino explains that he got the details of what happened afterwards from some other surviving members of the group. On the last day of the performance, Okubo remembered that cassette tape making fun of Shigemori and went off looking for it. Toyama wasn't there. He found the blank tape and listened to it to try to make sure it was the right one, but the audio of his conversation with Sadako and them making out was on it instead. For some reason, Okubo decided to play the tape over the intercom in the dressing room where Shigemori was. Naturally, hearing Sadako admit her love to someone else frustrated him, and he went to Sadako, yelling at her and hurling accusations and insults at her for 10 minutes. The look on his face wasn't angry or embarrassed. His expression was said to be utterly out of this world. Ah, yes, dorselessness. I've seen that before. Toyama figures that Sadako must have assumed he betrayed her, hence why he never saw her afterwards. He wants to know if Sadako is still alive, but Yoshino isn't certain himself, but he figures she's dead. However, he also points out a weird coincidence. Shigemori died of a cardiac arrest the day after that happened, and over the course of several years afterwards, almost everyone else who heard that tape died of similar causes. As Toyama walks home, he suddenly realizes something else weird. He was 100% certain that the microphone couldn't have recorded his conversation with Sadako. It was turned off and the audio meter never budged. However, her words stuck with him even after all this time. And then he suddenly has a heart attack, but is met by a vision of Sadako. Well, okay, we'll later learn this is the reborn one from Rasen, but still. Toyama, you've remembered me all these years, although the others, who said they loved me, forgot quickly. Still murdering you, though. I have a reputation to maintain, sorry. She says the memory engraved in his genes must be erased now, and I guess he dies from this. I don't care who you are. This pain feels similar to how I felt whenever I looked at you and touched you. Bittersweet pain, an anguish of the heart. At the time, I was filled with the fragrance of youth, the citrus freshness, Lemonheart. Ugh, it's like a fruity heartburn. And that's the end of Lemonheart. Definitely has more going for it than Coffin in the Sky. You understand why they use that as the basis for Ringu Zero, but it really doesn't add much. As we'll see in our final tale, really it just builds on this idea that Sadako was always just kind of a bad seed. And I think that kind of undermines what's supposed to be her tragic backstory. It's another reason why I personally find the novel's version of all this stuff inferior to the movies. Sadako's a genocidal attention hound wanting to live forever and manipulates people to get what she wants, and that's before she dies and infects people with a virus that kills them or gives birth to clones of herself. There's nothing wrong with having unrepentant bad seed villains. It's why I liked Kylo Ren so much before Rise of Skywalker, but Sadako's tale is supposed to be a sad, sympathetic one, and this version of events keeps trying to make us feel sorry for her while also doing everything possible to make us hate her. But let's see this play out in our final tale, completely original to the manga, Sadako. I don't remember when I began to feel that both my body and soul were different from others. I think it was the 4th time I decided to sit naked in the ocean for no reason. We start in 1946, where Shizuko goes out at night and goes diving for a Buddha statue in the water. Naked, of course, because this manga loves itself some naked women. After she found the statue, she changed, developing her psychic powers. She was discovered by Dr. Heihachiro Akuma, who fell in love with Shizuko, and the two had an affair, which resulted in Sadako. My mother returned to her hometown of Shashikiji and gave birth to me, Sadako. Immediately after, she left for Tokyo, leaving me behind. She returned 3 years later to take me with her. Living on an island alone for 3 years was tough as a baby. Dr. Akuma began spreading his research about her psychic powers, but other scholars labeled him a fraud. In desperation, Akuma arranged for the psychic demonstration, inviting 100 journalists to watch it. However, the young Sadako warns her mother that they all want her to fail. Still, she feels like she can't do anything about it and proceeds. This is the first adaptation of this story that actually friggin' showed what happened beyond some dude just randomly saying it's fake. In this case, her task was to guess what 2 dice had rolled, but the pressure from so many people wanting her to fail got to her and she screwed up. Dr. Akuma was driven out of academia and eventually developed tuberculosis. My mother was broken by society's harsh criticism. Behold, my viewers, the sheer power I hold as an internet critic. I can break psychics, drive scientists away. All shall love my criticism and despair. Soon after, they returned to the island, but Shizuko committed suicide by leaping into the volcano. As I watched the volcano, which swallowed my mother, I had a vision. It was of Werner Herzog in his underwear. I'm not quite sure what it means. Lava is something that burns everything. It's the great energy of Mother Earth, and that great energy was about to erupt. The moment I saw that overwhelming vision, I thought, someday I'll get back at the people. I will become a lava-themed supervillain. No, she says she'll do it using the very power that they dismissed. But of course, she's only like 6 at this point, so we fast forward to her after graduating high school and joining the theater group. By that time, my vague plan was shaping itself. So far, I had a baking soda volcano, a psychic hotline, and for some reason a bunch of wiener dogs all playing a part in it. I must succeed at the theater, no matter what. As soon as I win a Tony Award, people will have to take psychic powers seriously. This led to her meeting Toyama, and she admits in her narration that he wasn't like any other guy she'd met before, that he was genuinely nice and warm to her, but she fears losing his affection if he ever found out about her being intersex, as demonstrated by, yet again, being drawn naked. I mean, I sort of get it here. Artistically, it's representative of her being vulnerable and exposed and all, but since this comic has already shown how obsessed it is with naked women, it just feels like one more example of that among the rest, instead of something meant to actually be part of the story. Anyway, she also can't escape the feeling that she's gonna be dead soon as she looks at a TV set displaying static. However, I can't shake that TV is a bit anachronistic in its design. Television was certainly a thing in the 60s, of course. It's just something about its design here and it just being in the theater feels off. Anyway, we get some more conversation between Sadako and Toyama, where she asks what happens after they die. Does their soul and affection and whatnot live on? Toyama, even after a person dies, so long as the person had a strong attachment to someone, that life can continue. So, like a force ghost? What? No, don't be silly. I'm not talking about ghosts. I'm talking about videotape viruses, of course. We cut ahead to just after Shigemori learned of Sadako and Toyama being together. After getting drunk, he shows up at her apartment to angrily confront her again, and she greets him naked, revealing how she's intersex. Please, Director Shigemori, if you don't mind what I am, do whatever you please. And yeah, as you can tell by these over-the-top facial expressions, he's not taking this news well. I left the theater group Hisho. I could not pursue my dream to become an actress. So instead I decided to teach acting. It's not my dream, but the pay's decent at least. She felt despair over all this and went to visit her father in the hospital. With her psychic powers, she knew the day he was going to die, but it didn't really bother her all that much. And that of course leads us to her father's doctor attempting to assault her, discovering she's intersex, and calling her a man because he's an asshole, her telepathically saying she'll kill him, and then him killing her and throwing her in the well. We already went over last year how gross this is, so let's just move on to the goofy part. She assumes she's gonna die, but then she feels the smallpox virus having infected her. And the virus entered my body and began communicating with me. Okay, Sadako, I'm gonna assume that you have some head trauma going on right now and you're not quite thinking straight, because otherwise the story is telling me that the smallpox virus held a conversation with her. This convinces her to live in a very unorthodox fashion. I must fuse with the virus. I'll deliver my babies from my barren body. She recalls the story her mother told her about the Buddha statue and wonders if it felt the same as she did sinking into the water. I don't know how many hours passed. When I looked up, the round space transformed into a square space, and then I realized I was in a sponsored video for building a new website. What she's actually seeing is the view from the ventilation duct that Mai died in, and she crawls out of it, of course not caring about what happened to Mai. In about a week, I will grow up to be my original self. Although it's still me, I will be another species. I will be a monkfish for some reason. And so our manga ends with her deciding to go and visit Toyama, which is what we saw in Lemonheart. I have an idea. Why don't I visit him? And then I'll find the pathologist who is dating Mai and enact a convoluted revenge scheme on humanity by growing more Sadako clones. I make a lot of sense. This manga, well, it's better than Rasen, but it still relies a lot on the novels, in particular Rasen, for its stories. Sadako is definitely a better origin story than Lemonheart, or at least is necessary for a more complete version of Lemonheart, because we see things from her perspective, and we can detect some traces of why we'd want to sympathize with her, but it's still not that great. Sadako herself still coming across like a jerk who wants vague revenge on humanity because of her mom. Hell, she even admits her plans are vague, and frankly nonsensical. She doesn't have hatred or malevolence or sadism or anything. It's okay that she doesn't feel remorse for anything that she's done, that she wants to destroy the world and all that, but what I keep failing to see from this story and Rasen is why she wants to do it. She doesn't seem to be filled with rage or even anger about what happened to her mom in those stories. She just kind of wants to do it because it's what the story has to have her be. But then she also wants to go to the movies and spread clones of herself. It just feels so empty and hollow, and it's not surprising that the films went off in a different direction from the novels. For better or for worse, you get the idea in the films that she is pissed about what happened to her and her mom. Even Ringu Zero, where we do see the full tragedy of her death and a very sympathetic side to her, you get why she's so mad. Here, she's just kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and wants to live forever, but also she still wants revenge, but also she wants humanity to evolve with her virus. She's just not interesting in this manga or in Rasen, but the stories are convinced that we should be fascinated by her. It's like all the elements are there to make her compelling and interesting. Anger about her mom, angry at society being bigoted towards her, a desire for immortality, but they're not interested in putting in the work of showing why she is. Ugh. Whatever, this book is just not very good. Better than Rasen, but it's not saying much. Despite a few hiccups, Meimu's art is still overall great, and they can certainly pull off some spooky images when they need to. Next time, we celebrate Atop the Fourth Wall's 14th anniversary with a funeral, as we return to the Clone Saga to follow up on the story from last year.
That
When the little girl was 13 years old, her parents revealed to her why she had been born. While other sects of their church wished to give birth to their god, or simply live peaceful lives in a pact with God, the sect that the little girl and her family belonged to had other goals. They did not believe that God should be on this wretched earth, at least not until the unbelievers could be purged. And so they told their daughter that loved them very much that her entire purpose in life was to be drained of her essence, so that they could forge a weapon that could smite whomever or whatever they so desired, to cleanse the world of those that did not believe, to usher in their paradise. And thus she invited them to torment her, to bring about pain and suffering so that she could harness her tears and her torture. All through it she laughed and was gleeful. She said the same thing over and over. "Let me feel the love of God! Let me ascend into his glory! The love of God guides me!" Finally, they began to drain her blood, the liquid essence of her will, so that the ritual for the weapon could be completed. You don't have to do this, you know. I know what you must have went through. A cult that tortured and murdered you as a child, transferred your soul into that gun to use you to kill their enemies. The Margaret in this universe went through the same thing. The cult is gone. The other Linkara is gone. You don't have to follow anyone else's agenda, and you don't have to hurt anyone.
Do you know what my earliest memory is?
What?
Blood. Red, flowing, warm. It passed in front of my eyes. I think I must have fallen and hit my head. And it just poured over my vision. I dreamt about it afterwards for years. Still do on occasion. But my dreams are filled with more than that. It's the things that I see in the liquid. I dream of agony, torture, my own. What I went through in that ritual, I dreamt of victims. My victims. You were the one in my dreams of blood.
Listen to me. The Margaret from this universe, she went through a lot. Probably as much as you did. It split her, creating a being of vengeance and suffering that just wanted to inflict it on everyone else around her. But it isn't really you talking. We can beat this. We can do this together. We can...
Never tell me that I am not in control. The other you thought that he was in charge. I put that to rest real quick. Oh, you must be in so much pain. You must be so sad and pitiful and need us to help you out. You don't know anything. No one is commanding me. No one is forcing me to do anything. I look at you and I don't see a human being. I see an ant under a magnifying glass. I can't wait to see you burn. You hurt me?
I'm sorry, but I had to...
You dare to hurt me? Some balding fat YouTuber thinks that he is better than me? Thinks that he can shoot at me? And with that, I'm ending this sooner than we had planned.
That's enough of that, I think.
You're the other one. The one from this universe? But now you're...
Yeah, I realized I'm a guy. You can call me Mark.
Well, I can call you a lot of things right now.
Stop this, please.
Stop what? Stop hurting your precious partner?
Yes, I know you don't want to hurt him. We're the same.
I think the fact that I'm talking to a guy version of me is evidence that we are not.
That has nothing to do with what I mean. Our childhoods. They were the same, weren't they? You said the last time that we met that you volunteered to be sacrificed, but how true is that? They started by telling you how special you were, how much your future was a privilege and a blessing.
I am not!
And they hurt you, didn't they? The cult meetings were always the worst. They'd loom over you and scream at you if you just wanted to play with something. Your parents defended you.
You don't know the first thing about me!
At the very first cult meeting, Whatley grabbed you by the arm and yanked you so hard, and you were so confused. but your parents stepped in. They said not to hurt you, and that was the first time you thought you truly understood love. Because they loved you, and they would protect you. They apologized to you in the car after that first meeting, and that he was out of line, and that things were gonna be okay. And they weren't okay. Because then that special night came, and you were so scared. But they held your hand, and they told you that they loved you, and they were so happy for you, and everything that was going to happen to you.
They told me what was gonna happen. I knew. I volunteered. I wanted it.
And then they were the first ones with knives. And then they were smiling. They smiled through the whole damn thing as you cried. They laughed at your tears.
I volunteered. I told them to do it. I smiled. I don't want your kindness. I don't want your sympathy. I want your blood. I want your soul. How dare you pity me? You disgust me. You think the pain made me sad? I see the difference between us now even more clearly. Your weakness. You cared more about them than the cause. But I believed in it. I believed in what we were doing. Then it happened. And it took me so long to realize the truth of it all. You made excuses. Mommy and Daddy don't love me enough, and all of that bull. But I saw. I know the truth, and you feel sad about me?
We want to save you.
Save yourselves.